Why do different Star Wars factions have different color blasters? What was the fate of Barriss after the Jedi Temple bombing? We've got those questions and a bunch more to tackle in today's Q&A video. So, hope everyone's doing well. For those who don't know, I have a Patreon, patreon.com/Eckhart'sLadder, and if you join, one of the benefits alongside watch-alongs and behind-the-scenes stuff, though I've been fairly busy for those this month, is that you get to submit one or more questions to my monthly Q&A series, and you're guaranteed an answer. It can be about lore, YouTube, whatever you want. However, for this video, because there weren't that many questions, I'm also going to draw from the hashtag AskEckQuestions that the rest of the community has submitted, and that's generally how I do things. So if you have a question you'd like to see answered, becoming a patron is a guaranteed way to get that answer, but you can also submit it with the hashtag AskEck. As a note, I was actually going to answer another question I didn't include in this video about what different colors of blaster bolts mean. It's probably the question I've gotten asked more than any other, but I decided to dedicate a little more time and effort and research to the question, and I put together a YouTube short. I'm going to link it down below, and I'll probably go ahead and answer a few questions in the shorts form over the next few days, so make sure you're subscribed to that channel. That's X Clips, which again, I've linked down below. Alright, so patron questions first, and the first question is from Owen. He asks, is it possible we may see Starhawks in Rogue One? If it really is set after 9, then it's possible, but most if not all were supposedly destroyed along with the Republic fleet over Hosnian Prime. Maybe a few survived, or we'll get a new mark. Yeah, I generally agree with that. I do think it's very possible that we do see the Starhawk for practical purposes and also because it's a cool ship. Practically, the Starhawk model has been completed. I think, just a guess, that Lucasfilm and ILM probably have a very high quality one that can be built off of for the show, but all the Starhawks being destroyed according to some lore is really a small barrier. It's very easy to just say, oh, they built more, there were lots of ISDs still lying around, or another cool option that I want you guys to think of is maybe we get a Starhawk based off the Resurgence, a Starhawk successor. That could be really cool. I'd love to see some concept art of that. Owen also had another question. He said, so recently a background character from The Last Jedi named Baron Atzmid was an antagonist in the DLC for the VR game Tales from the Galaxy's Edge. Who is a background character you'd like to see have a more prominent role in future media? That's a great question. I really like what they've been doing with the From a Certain Point of View books. They reminded me a lot of the Tales from Jabba's Palace or Tales from the Bounty Hunter books in Star Wars Legends. If I were to think of one character I'd like to see featured more, it would have to be those weird Decraniated from Rogue One. Those are really cool. Either that or some pilot, because that would mean we get more Starfighter stories. So Ahsoka asked the question about Barriss Offee. They said, in the fate of Barriss Offee post-Jedi Temple bombing, as far as I know, is unknown. Do you think she might appear in the upcoming Ahsoka show as an anti-hero or in some other role? Personally, I know that Barriss teaming up with Ahsoka post-bombing is a popular story in fan fiction. And yeah, Barriss Offee's fate is definitely unknown at this point. I don't really think I would like her to team up with Ahsoka. I like her ending where she's corrupted by the dark side, and that's largely due to the Jedi. And of course, the Clone Wars. I think her returning after that point maybe lessens that a little bit. Obviously, she could have been an Inquisitor. I remember one of the big theories before Fallen Order came out was that she would be the second sister. Another option is she just dies. I mean, she would have been in Republic custody. It would have been very easy for clone troopers to shoot into a cell and kill her. A second question from Ahsoka asks, who, if not Barriss, might Ahsoka have lightsaber duels with in the Ahsoka show? And the question she's really asking is, who's the stand-in for Sabayoth? And I really don't know. Palpatine had a lot of projects going on at this point. I mean, he's probably dead or transitioning to his new body, but still, lots of stuff was going on during the Galactic Civil War. He might still have some Inquisitors left or some other partially trained troops. I don't think, again, that it will be Barriss. We could see Ezra corrupted to the dark side. I know that's one fan theory, but I honestly don't know. It's not a great answer, but I don't know. Continuing with patron questions, Rudy asks, what would be the immediate fallout and long-term changes to politics, trade, etc. if a group used Centerpoint Station to move multiple planets/stars across the galaxy before rendering it unusable? And that's an interesting one, and one we actually do see somewhat in Star Wars Legends. For those who don't know, Centerpoint Station is a giant super weapon. It can move celestial objects. Some believe that's how the Corellian system was made, but it can also outright destroy things with a gravity beam. And it does do so actually during the Yuuzhan Vong War. Centerpoint Station is used at the Battle of Fondor to, one, wipe out a big part of the Yuuzhan Vong fleet, but also to devastate the Hapens, which were fighting against the Vong. Centerpoint politically factors into the Corellian trilogy, where basically Centerpoint is used to hold the Corellian system hostage. There's interdiction fields set up. It's pretty interesting in that respect, but it's also brought back into the fold during the Legacy of the Force era. And I think those pretty much accurately paint what I can imagine happening. I think anyone who seizes Centerpoint immediately becomes target number one for whatever major faction exists in the galaxy, because it just has too much destructive potential, and unlike the Death Star, is actually very dangerous even at range. The second part of the question is what happens if they render it unstable by sabotage or by destroying it, and in that case they really just become terrorists, I think. There's an interesting look at what happens when a mysterious group is a part of some cataclysm or war crime in the Thrawn duology, which is basically about the galaxy looking for a group of Bothans who facilitated the destruction of a peaceful planet Kalamas. So I'll say read that. I think that is kind of a situation related to what you're talking about. I hope that question is helpful. I'm telling you really just to read a lot of things, which might not be. We get another question from James, who asks, what are your thoughts on the idea of ditching the name Slave One? Would it be an inappropriate bolderism which shows Disney has insufficient respect for the cultural institution they've purchased, or is it a trivial detail that is not worth preserving given the unpleasantness of the reference to slavery? I've definitely heard arguments either way. I don't necessarily follow that it's disrespectful, because the franchise does use slavery as a plot point. Like, whether the name of the ship is Slave One or not, Boba Fett sort of is a slaver. He takes people and he sells them, whether their lives or their deaths, whatever else. It's not quite slavery, but it's slavery adjacent at least. I also don't think it's the end of the world if they do it. I think that this whole issue has been somewhat obfuscated. I think there is a real discussion here. A lot of people are trying to make it seem like Disney has already changed it based on evidence that doesn't really follow, in my opinion, which sort of hides the fact that there probably is something behind some of the smoke here. Now, I don't think a decision has been made, but if you watch, say, The Mandalorian behind the scenes, Slave One is not mentioned. If you watch the descriptive audio, it's always referred to as Boba Fett's ship, so maybe something is happening. I don't know. I won't be a huge fan of it, I'll just say that. And I believe that's pretty much it for the Patreon questions. If I somehow missed one of yours, make sure you send me a message, and depending on your preference, I'll either answer it to you in a private message, or I will make sure I include it in the next Q&A. Alright, so on to the hashtag AskEck questions. The first that I want to talk about comes from Rebecca, who asks, where is hypermatter harvested from? Are hypermatter reactions self-sustaining like antimatter reactions? And I'm not sure if there's been a concrete answer to this, but from what I remember without reading a whole bunch of books, they're sometimes collected from black holes. Whether they're self-sustaining or not, I think Star Wars sometimes struggles with harder sci-fi discussions like that when it comes to resources and storage related to starship travel, so I think that's something that the universe is probably better not diving too deep into. The next question is from Oblivion HDR, who says, whatever happened cloning the Zillo Beast? I remember something about Palpatine saying about it at the end of the arc in the Clone Wars, and yeah, I imagine Palpatine did some experiments on the Zillo Beast. We get something kind of related to that, I believe, in Star Wars canon in one of the Thrawn books where he's working on lightsaber ablative armor. My guess is that he was just not successful. He wasn't able to replicate the Zillo Beast's incredible durability to like Starship or probably clone armor. Another question I got from Hera Mittman is, can you do some videos about Dune? I've been thinking about this. I did one video in the past on the Dune navigators, the spice navigators, which was kind of, when I read the book, one of the things that grabbed me the most. I have read the Dune novel, and I think one of the sequels a while ago. The novel is kind of dry, and I mean in content, literally you get thirsty when you read the novel, and it's pretty long. I'm thinking about rereading it before the movie comes out and maybe doing some lore content. If that's what you guys want, let me know. We also have the special hashtag for this specific Q&A. One we got was from W Meter. He says, are you considering a video on the Galaxy of Fear series? Absolutely, I am going to do Galaxy of Fear. When it comes to novels like that, which I'm less familiar with, I don't think I've read all of the Galaxy of Fear series. Some of them I remember getting from my library when I was in elementary school, I believe. It will come when I've reread them as part of TapCaf Transmissions, which is the book club podcast that I do. So if you want Galaxy of Fear content, know that it will come after that, and also consider listening to the podcast as well, because that's where we cover a lot of these topics. Shiny Starmy Studios uses the hashtag and asks, could a Force-sensitive individual destroy a world Devastator? I don't think so. I mean, you'd have to be a pretty incredible Force user, maybe Palpatine at the height of his power with something like one of his big Force storms could, but other than that, I think it's pretty damn impossible. Maybe you can drag it down to the planet's surface, but those things had the best technology available to the Empire, and they typically did not have organic operators, which makes the whole Force thing even more difficult. The next question's from Luke, who says, would you retcon the sequel trilogy? And I don't like the sequel trilogy, but I also don't like the idea of content being sort of made by fan design. Like, I want content that I like, obviously, and the sequel trilogy does not hit very many buttons for me. However, I think it removes a lot of the important bits of an artistic work if it's ultimately up to the fans to decide what counts or not, if that makes sense. Personally, canon's not a big thing for me. I read legend stories and they're just as real as anything else, i.e. not at all. So I don't think it needs to be retconned. What I would prefer really is just the story to move away from aspects that didn't work. There were characters in the sequels I like. I like Finn. I like the idea of Rey. The characters and the actors especially are good. I like Poe. I like the idea of Kylo. Just some of the execution wasn't quite there for me. I think the final question or sort of comment today that I'm going to answer is from the Sharper Coder blog, who says, did you notice that the wild card appears in episode 2? Of course you did. I'm not sure most fans noticed it. And yeah, so an Action 6 transport, which is the ship type of the very famous vessel, the wild card from Star Wars Legends, is inserted into episode 2. It's a part of the movie. And that's cool because it was a Legend ship first, just like Coruscant was a Legends planet first. I really liked when George did what he could, even if he didn't agree with everything in the EU, where he took inspiration from the things he liked. I thought that was pretty cool. I'm just kind of wondering whether they built the model off something that already existed or whether ILM made it from scratch, because the model, I think, in its best form appeared in, I think, X-Wing Alliance. I'd be interested to learn more about the behind the scenes there. But I think that's pretty much all the time I have for questions today. I'm going to try to make these as long as I can, maybe put a little less editing in them so you guys can kind of just listen while you're doing something else. If you want it for October, you're better off leaving it with the hashtag AskEkOctober. I get like a lot of hashtag AskEk questions daily, so when it comes to doing the Q&A, I don't just want to see stuff from the last day. I want people who are watching these Q&A specifically, so leave it with the hashtag AskEkOctober, and there's a very good likelihood that if you hit me for a couple of months that I will get one of your questions, or you can get a guaranteed answer by going to patreon.com/EckhartsLadder. Join at any tier and I will take your question most likely. Unless we get overwhelmed by questions, in that case, I'll have to change that slightly, but I don't see that happening. And if you have a couple of questions, feel free to ask 2 or more. But guys, until next time, have a good one, be safe, and may the Force be with you.